So hello everyone, my name is Vivian and I'm a producer from here, from Budapest, and I want to introduce to you Margje de Koning. Did I say it right?
It's very, very good.
Whom some of you might know. She's from the Netherlands and currently the artistic director for the Human Rights Film Festival in the Netherlands called Movies That Matter. The next guest is Fleur Neerdu, and the name, she is from the UK, where she works as a freelance producer, impact producer, and a marketing strategist. And we have Vivian Schroder from Berlin, who's also a producer at a production company, but besides that, she works with Good Pitch, which is something that we will talk about what that is and what they do. And we have László Józsa from Budapest, who is a producer from here, and he makes important films, and some of them have impact campaigns. So, I think that us documentary filmmakers, we would like to think that our work matters and that the films that we make might make a difference, which sometimes turns out to be a very romantic idea, but other times it seems to be working. Anyway, I remember it wasn't that long time ago that I first heard of the concept of impact and impact campaigns for documentaries, and then it became a huge trend, and now everyone who makes documentaries wants to think about and work with impact. But actually, how do you see the evolution of this thing? How would you explain it, and where do you think we've gotten with it by now? Margje?
Well, what I think when I started to make documentaries myself, like this is years and years ago, and from that time till now, I mean, obviously there's so many sources where you can find films now. Like when I started, you had 3 channels and that was it, and now you can get your documentaries on platforms all over the world. So that's a huge different thing. And then I think with documentary, especially places like this and human rights festivals or documentary festivals in general, that you can meet other people and meet experts and so on. I think that's something, this long tail which you could use, is very, very important. And I think these meetings places become firstly more important than it's going on television, surely, but to get it on platforms and get these meetings, I think that's the big change what I've seen over the years going on, and it's becoming more and more important because we've got so many platforms. That's what I think, and then we don't seem to meet like we do today. Why I think this is so important anymore, and that's for the industry, but also to bring your films to places where they're relevant for. Like when we do in The Hague, is that we get people from the tribunal, we get people from the ministries and other places to come and meet the filmmakers or the activists in our case who are within the film, are the main characters in the film, and it really makes a difference. Like last year, I have always been a commissioning editor before. I did a documentary in Colombia, and he was threatened by life for his work. He came to the Netherlands. He was there for a week. People from Foreign Affairs, he was in contact with them, and then once he got back, they gave him protection and helped him a program. So it does matter, but you need to, I think you need to meet. That's very important. But maybe
I think that. Yeah. Okay. Good. I don't hear it. I think that the impact producing and that it has become so important has much to do also with the possibilities of financing your film. In Europe, we are still quite fortunate that we have a lot of broadcasters who finance the films up front, or at least, you know, you get money for it. And film funds are still quite well equipped. I know that in Hungary, for example, that's a bit of a different story here, but I can speak for Germany or also for the Netherlands or the UK, that's still the same. But if we look to the US, where impact producing has been done since many, many years, filmmakers had to look to other sources to finance their films. And broadcasters don't really finance films over there. Rarely, and film funds are also not functioning like they do over here in Europe, and they don't have a Creative Europe, for example. They don't have these institutions in place. So filmmakers over there, they were just naturally looking to, okay, my film is about human rights, so who could be my partners, and who could have an interest in the film, and who could help me finance it, and who could maybe also otherwise help with a network. And so that's how it all came about, and I think it now reached also Europe. Certainly the UK is ahead of us, and Scandinavia is as well. The Netherlands is now starting as well, and Germany, for example, it's still very much in the beginning. It's not done much at all, I must admit. But that's why we're here to change it.
Yeah, and before we get into these specifics, I think it would probably be useful to explain in simple words what impact means. How do you think about that? There are people here who are not filmmakers, so how would you, Fleur, how would you explain it in the most simple way you can?
Yes, I get asked this question a lot, so I would describe it, and correct me if you think there's something else to it, but you have a producer, which I think most of us will know. You know, you guide your team and you help finish the film, and you have a creative goal as a team. And an impact producer should be working with, they should be separate roles, or they can be performed by the same person. But it's essentially building a campaign or building movement around the film alongside the film team to then sort of take your message further and make sure that you're engaging with the communities that the film is made for and made with, and pushing that message. So I think that's a simple way to describe it. Would you add something else, or?
Impact goes in many ways. You know, impact is can be that it's just addresses on television and so on. Impact can be, as you were saying, impact can be that, for instance, the documentary, which did not so well on television, I know, but being in the festival, and when he brought the film back, it won the big prize in Colombia for best documentary. That helped the whole case. And that Foreign Affairs in the Netherlands saw like, oi, we need to really help them. That's another form of impact. It can go many ways. And as you were saying, impact is also that you upfront get your films partly financed, but there's always a tension. I mean, if I speak for the Dutch, and I speak for England, well, which you know better than I do maybe, to keep the independent journalism. That's a really, really harsh one in terms of getting impact partners at the beginning. Very often you try to get them a little bit later, so you keep the independence as the filmmaker, and that you're not dependent of the money, and it becomes half of a corporate film for a certain financer. That's always, I mean, that's what I, as a filmer, as a commissioning editor, and still I'm very alert to see that it's the independent filmmaking. And that impact comes a little bit later. But that's a luxury, as you said, that's a luxury point, that we have a film fund, we have a TV fund, we have a Kobo fund, we have quite a lot of financial resources.
Yeah, I think that's really, I've never thought of it that way, because the way I operate is that I would always want the impact to begin as early as possible. I think that means that you can get the strongest campaign or the strongest teamwork if you and your filmmakers and the other stakeholders, like if you're working with a community that's connected to an NGO, for example, if you make sure that you're all on the same page, because that means that you can make, I think, yeah, the artistic thing is really important. Your impact campaign shouldn't be affecting your director's vision, but your impact campaign and if you want to have one and your intention is to make a difference with your film, then you have to build that into the film somehow. So yeah, I would probably say as earlier the better, but yeah, making sure that your creative isn't diluted.
I find it quite hard to do an impact campaign from this country, because just how you mentioned, it's much more advanced in other parts of the world, like so many other things. So let me ask László how they went about their impact campaign for his latest film, Ghetto Balboa. Can you see this film at this festival?
Yes, it's tomorrow at 4:30 at the Toldi Cinema. So it's in the Hungarian panorama section. So
what's the story? Can you briefly tell us the story?
We made a film about a former mafia guy in Budapest 8 district, which is also called the ghetto. It's clearing up a little bit. It's a district with really high Roma population, also with very poor people. It's a slummy area, and it's a story about this former mafia guy who got shot, almost died, and then he decided that if he continues this way, he's going to hell, so he's going to change his life. And this shooting 13 years ago, and ever since he's been training young poor kids for boxing. First in his own apartment, then on the streets, and then by the end of the film he's teaching these kids in the local school. And let me just go back to, because I think when we started this film we didn't even know what impact campaign was. And definitely there were no sources for any kind of impact money or just to help our work. All we knew is that there's a really strong message from a small community in Hungary. We also knew that our main protagonist, anyways, just to go back to the story, so it starts training kids. One of the kids is really talented, and we follow their relationship from the streets to a world championship belt in professional boxing. So it's a really strong story, and we knew that this story in the community where he's from, in real poor areas, it's some kind of positive message about Roma people or poor people, which you don't very often hear. And we knew that this is something we should keep in focus and when we talk about the film. And also because our main protagonist's life, he was doing this mission and work for free for a decade. We were also hoping that the film somehow manages to change his situation, his life. He would get a place to train, to continue his mission. He would get some money for what he's doing. So, and also because some of the filmmakers, actually all the filmmakers are, besides me, are from the Roma communities, they also had this deep urge of sharing positive stories about people. So we had something in mind, but my approach is actually, I spent 7 years in one of the biggest advertising agencies in Hungary as an agency producer, and advertisements also try to make an impact, but the outcome of the impact is make money, to sell products, to get to know about some product in the market. So actually our approach was not so much just from the social impact part, but the way me and my colleagues were socialized in the advertising world. And it was a really good lesson, because film is a product in a way, and you have to know who you are selling it to, who you are speaking to, what the core values of this product is. And this is kind of how we try to build up our campaign. So the main goal for us was to change the life first of our main protagonist, to make a change, make an impact in his life. Actually, the film ends up with a negative message, because the local mayor promised that he can stay in this school in local school and train the kids as long as he wants. And one of the last scenes of the film is he's kicked out of this school. So by the mayor, actually, who promised. And it was a big journey until actually the local mayor, after the film came out, and we started communicating with the film, going around the country, until the mayor realized that the only thing he can do not to get out of this situation, being portrayed negative in this story, is that he actually starts financing his mission. So this is how we made the local campaign. But just going back to the advertising world, we also knew, and the realities of impact money in Hungary, that so there are no sources where you can apply for money. So you have to be creative. There's also, this film is the impact goes on a local level. So we couldn't really reach out to foreign companies, or because this really is changing the life of this very district. So, and we reached out to, first of all, crowdfunded for the impact, and which is a fantastic way of raising your audience, communicating with media, and also raising some money. And we also reached out, we were brave enough to reach out to sports companies, because this film is about boxing. And to our surprise, a big department store called Decathlon answered our email after 5 minutes sending out that they want to be involved in this. And so basically the realities are, for me, is more down to earth. We knew what we want to get on a small scale, and we had to find a way to make it happen.
This sounds brilliant, but I wonder how you did that, because with my previous film, A Woman Captured, we also did impact work, and I think we did reach some of the things we wanted. But it was always a struggle. We also reached out to corporate people and companies, and never actually were able to raise any money for that. But maybe we were doing it wrong, I don't know. But I just remember sending out all those emails to our contacts, and nothing ever came back. So all the impact work we did was just out of our own pockets and personal efforts, and it was worth it, but you can't be doing that forever like that, because it's a fast way to burn out. So I want to ask how it looks like in an ideal case. Fleur, you're an impact producer. How should it work actually? How do you work together with the main producer of the film, or the director, even if you do? When do you start, and what is the relationship, and how does this work in an ideal scenario?
Yes, so the ideal is that the director is making a film that they know has a message that they want to help share. So they instinctively know, I need an impact producer, or I want some type of campaign to run alongside the film. And somehow they find me, or they find another impact producer. So as early as possible is the answer. And I think the first thing to do is to really, it sounds simple, but to kind of just strategize together, throw ideas on the table, think about what it is you want, what all the different scenarios could look like of how to get it, and who you already know that can help, or who you already are working with that wants to introduce you to, you know, their partners, or I don't know. It's a sort of, you start just by discussing what you have on the table, and then I think the next stage is also, in my opinion, I think that whilst you're not whilst you're in the early stages of the edit, but say a rough cut or maybe a locked cut, but you have a bit of flexibility, that's when you would also screen it to stakeholders or potential people that would want to work with you on the release of the film. So yeah, I think the answer is early. You want to start working.
But if I want to hire you for my film, do I need to pay you up front, or you'll be working?
Yeah, so
I
think that there are two answers. So for yes, so some people operate where they get paid, or you and me, and you operate where you're not paid until there's money, which isn't a very good work ethic. It's not a good plan, and I think that there's this whole discussion within the impact world about how to make it a sustainable career. It's not easy. So I do marketing as well, and that really is how I earn money. I do marketing for fiction films as well. And then I am able to put time into documentary impact campaigns. And obviously the first thing that you do is you identify potential funds that are opening, and you work together to write your applications, and hopefully one of these turns into funding. And in your case, it didn't turn into funding, and by that point, you're right, you burn out and you can't sustain it. But hopefully something happens where you get a pocket of money, and that pocket of money gets given to you and whatever team you need to have beside you.
Yeah, I mean, since I'm doing the grassroots work now in Germany to prepare for the Good Pitch, which we are doing in 2 years' time, I'm talking a lot to foundations and to NGOs and so on. And what I see is that these organizations are desperately looking for how to make an impact. And what you need to do then is to convince them that film can be an option. Most of them have not worked with film before, so they are really quite scared about it, because they don't know, what can I expect from a filmmaker? And what can I do? And how does that work? I've never done it before. And of course, some filmmakers also haven't done it before. They don't know how to work with an NGO, a foundation, institution, and so on. But
it's two very different worlds.
It's totally different worlds. And that's why when you say, you know, if you come from the advertising world, yes, there is a lot of parallels. A normal film producer doesn't have the mindset that you actually need for an impact producer. In rare cases, the film producer can be an excellent impact campaigner, because maybe that film is so much this person's film that they can also sell it very well. But in most cases, film producers are filmmakers, and they are not selling, you know. We all hate pitching forums, in a way.
Tell us more about Good Pitch, what it actually is, and what can we expect from Good Pitch Germany?
So let's start with Good Pitch is quite a unique program, I should call it, where filmmakers can apply, and the film is mostly already at the finishing stages when they apply. Certainly when we go now to Europe, because if we have broadcasters on board, you cannot mix private money with state money, so the film needs to be financed, and then the film is open for the impact campaign with other sources of money. So that works. To combine it like in the US is not an option. But so what we do at Good Pitch is that the selected films go first to a so-called impact lab, which is a brainstorming session where you think, okay, so this is the film. That's no longer a question. The film is there. And then you think, okay, so if you can dream big, what do you want your film to do? And who are your ideal partners? And then through 3-4 days, you just think for every project, okay, so this is how we can imagine it. So after this impact lab, the outreach director then works very closely with every film team and looks at, okay, so this is the partners, how can I contact them, how can I already tell them about the film, maybe there's already a trailer, maybe there's even a rough cut, like you said, so then you convince them that, you know, they need to be on board for this film. And 6 months after the Impact Lab then is the event, and the whole audience is curated. So that means it's very selected organizations and people from these organizations in the room who all have an interest in one or more films that are pitched that day. And they can should stand up and say, okay, you know what, you want to bring your film to the UN, I'm there, I can put together a group of people who needs to watch this film, for example. And that's how it then works. It's a very interactive event in the end.
And is Good Pitch connected to Doc Society, formerly known as BritDoc?
Yes.
So it originates from the UK?
Behind Good Pitch. Good Pitch is one program that
and
they
you do an event at different places every...
That all depends.
Or how does, like...
It really depends. I mean, they usually do as a franchise system. So there have been, until today, I think 40 plus events around the world. And of course, there's like, how many people working at Doc Society? Maybe 12 worldwide. I mean, in the UK, one in Amsterdam, and then in New York. And of course, they can't do all these projects or these events themselves. So they have local people, like me now in Germany, who are helping them to put it there.
So you're specifically working for this one, to prepare this one event that will take place in Germany in
21.
Okay.
Yes. And what we do, because our focus will be Eastern Europe, including Hungary, very important. Yes, so we want to really go this direction now, because it's been travel in Europe, it has been traveling throughout Scandinavian countries, it's been of course in the UK, it's been in Amsterdam last year, and so we are slowly going south and east.
Was one in Indonesia as well recently, I believe.
Yeah, there was one in New York about 2.5, 3 weeks ago. Yeah, but I mean the European editions are always done very closely with everyone at Doc Society.
Okay, but do you also help? You mentioned that the production needs to be in a rather advanced phase when they come to you, but are you actually able to help with financing, either to complete the film or start the impact as well? Like, do you have grants or?
We personally don't have grants, but there are different programs from Doc Society where you can apply for. They're working on a very big environmental fund at the moment, which they hope to launch early next year for, I think it's European countries, I'm not sure actually. But yeah, that's a big thing. But of course it depends. I mean, for example, if you work, talking now from Germany, if I have my film financed through a state broadcaster, then the film needs to be financed before I can start with the campaigning. I cannot mix that money. But of course, if you have other sources of money who don't have any problem with that, you also mix in private money from organizations, then of course you can also go there and say, like, listen, I need another, I don't know, 50,000 euros for completing the film, for the post-production. Of course you can. And then hopefully maybe there's a broadcaster who stands up and says, like, yeah, I'm going to do it. I want your film.
Okay.
So it really works a little bit different looking at the financing that you already have in place for your film.
Yeah, but technically, if my film is not yet completed, but I already have some sources, private money sources for impact, I think I can use it as long as I keep them separated. But no? I mean, parallel, I could, as a producer.
Yes, if you've raised money for impact, you can use it for your impact. And I think with Good Pitch, although Doc Society don't provide finishing funds for the teams that they pick, it's such a fantastic opportunity, because you are, like Vivian said, you're put in a room where there are tons of people that could potentially put the finishing funds down. So as a team, you prioritize what you need from the people in the audience, and that might be, I need 5K to finish my grade or whatever it is, or I need X amount to hire an impact producer. So you kind of figure out what you want, and together you get the right people in the room that should be able to give you that. So in a way, inadvertently, they are helping you fund the film.
Sure, sure. I just wanted to clarify to understand precisely what you offer, but sure.
Yeah. And I think what the real strength is, is that it's, and I find that is so powerful at the event, is that it's not only about money. Some people just have an incredible network that they can open up for the film, and that helps so much more. You can't even put it into money terms, you know? And it's so beautiful if people just say, like, you know what, I've got this, I don't know, I've got this big organization, I have a newsletter, and I don't know, 50,000 people are subscribed to that, and I'm happy to send it out to my people. It's amazing.
Sure, that's wonderful. I guess just the fact that I'm coming from a place where we are used to be working for free a lot, it was an important question to me, because it would be nice to make a living, you know.
I'm curious, in your case, because we aired Women Capture, and it was obviously one of the big films of the Y.
Yes.
Did that then generate some money for you? Because it's shown in so many countries. I mean, it was huge. That's also a thing I call impact personally. And it was highly rated, like in the Netherlands, it was prime time. A lot of people watched it. So, or am I going too much into the Y system here?
Yeah, that's a different story. I would say also they had their own cut. So our film for the theaters, the feature film, the festival version was a different story, and also timeline-wise, it's a bit different. But I don't want to get into the
no, because I thought, I mean, everybody, it resonates. Women captured.
And what I said about our impact work for free, and it was also a good impact. I only meant specifically for Hungary, though. No, I didn't mean the international.
Yeah, because internationally, this film particularly went extremely well.
Yes. Sorry if that wasn't clear, because László was speaking about the Hungarian work they did, and that's what I meant. Yeah. But let us hear more about this festival, Movies That Matter.
Well, this is a festival. It's slightly different from this festival because we have feature films as well. So we do some issues and are addressed by feature films, and not so much are too hard to address by documentaries. So we have both, but which might be for interest of you. We have one competition called The Activist, and it's one person in a film who is really standing up for an issue, and we all bring that person to The Hague. And if you might know, that's where well, I guess you will know the International Tribunal and so on. So there's a lot of international experts living in The Hague, and we bring them together. And after the week try that the case this activist is working for, that he gets help, or she, in their home countries. And the example I gave was for Colombia. And then we do one on law cases. So the trial of Mladic was there last year. Some other films in that competition, and we obviously have a Dutch competition, and then we have a lot of focus competitions on environment, on women issues, on extreme democracies, on and a few other on the move, about refugees who are on the move anywhere, Midnight Travelers, that sort of films are all aired in that section. And obviously we're very interested to, if you have anything, I'll leave some of those. So you can apply, but what we do, we really nurture the filmmakers when they come to the festival and do in-depth Q&As to generate that impact. And it works, because what we do, which I mean, money is one thing, but in the end of the day, which most of the time really helps, is politics, if you like it or not. I mean, the films, we had the best impact when we could show it in the parliament and laws got changed. I mean, we did once a film on prostitution by the internet in Manila, and a Dutch and a Belgian journalist went undercover, and discovered a whole network for these girls, and apparently in the Netherlands the police was not allowed because of privacy reasons to get too far into computers, and because then we showed this documentary in the parliament and it changed the law. So what we tend to do is
that's the dream, probably the ultimate dream
that's
for
what
a lot of
Movies
us.
That Matter does nationally and internationally. Try to change that, and then you need the politics. Like we do, we select like 6 films, and all embassies all around the world, Dutch embassies, pick 1 or 2 of those films and show it at the embassy. And at the embassy, you've got all the international people again. So it's obviously I'm on a different chair now. I don't have to raise the money for films anymore, as I did in my former job, or help raising it. But what we can do now is create a huge impact worldwide. So to bring it to the embassies, to bring it to the politicians, and then The Hague is a fantastic place, of course, because you got the International Tribunal, we get the high-end lawyers in, the judges, they all come to the festival. We organize screenings at the ministries where we think foreign affairs is always around. And to be really honest, if you want to change something, that's where the real change is. That was I was about to think with your film. If you talk only about Hungary, was it shown at the parliament or something the like, or was it only shown on TV? Where was it shown in Hungary? Let's ask that question.
There were a lot of screenings, but rather smaller community screenings. No, or which one do you mean?
Because that's something that then you can maybe change laws and get women like your main character be protected.
Do you also work on the yearly basis? Like, do you select your films from the previous year, and every year you have a selection from the?
Yeah, we do from it. We don't need premieres. We're happy with some Dutch premieres. But for sure, Collective will be shown at our festival because it's an important film. Alexander is a very good person to address it also in the Netherlands. And I think a film like that, it's important that it will be shown then in Bucharest at the Dutch embassy again. So that's why we for surely will select a film like that. So it doesn't have to be premiere, but we only select films from last year. So 2018, we don't select anymore.
I think that it's a little bit difficult to understand how all these different concepts are connected. Like we have impact, we have audience engagement, we have outreach, and even crowdfunding also often comes into the picture. So can we draw a super simple map of these concepts, or is there an umbrella that to explain it to people who not have the overview that you have, guys?
I mean, yeah, it is quite complicated, I guess, because of all the jargon. But I mean, yeah, so the first thing I'm going to try and explain it, but before I do, there is, so Doc Society, they have a document called the Impact Field Guide, which is such an amazing resource. It's for free and it's on their website, and it basically walks you through impact. Like step 1, you know, you've got a film, right through to the final step, which is how do I evaluate the impact that the film has made. So that's definitely worth reading. So yeah, I mean, so what you were talking about with your film, that's like the jargon is, that's like bottom down, I think. So you're looking to make a change by getting decision makers to change laws, and that's quite an ambitious, and that's not always possible. So there's also bottom up, which sounds a little bit more like what you were doing. So you're doing work with you were doing screenings with organizations on the ground, I guess, for women captured. Like you were doing.
A lot of times we did, yeah.
So this, like, usually, you know, your outreach with people like ordinary people, organizations that already are working or thinking about the subjects in your film, that's just as important as, you know, trying to get the film seen by someone in Parliament. And often, the more if they work in tandem, the better chance you have of getting both of them to work. I don't know if that helps. So what was the other thing you wanted to know? So audience outreach, crowdfunding. Yeah, so I've not done crowdfunding, so you maybe talk about crowdfunding. I know it's a really, really good way to raise money and also to build an audience for your film, because people that are putting money into your crowdfunding campaign, they want to know more about the film, so you can keep in touch with them, you can tell them when it's finished, you can invite them to screenings, you can ask them to share. You have an automatic audience, so that's always a really good place to start if you need funding for impact.
I guess that what I'm also hearing from what you're saying is that it probably all boils down to the impact goal that you have to identify for yourself rather early in this process than later. So whether your goal is to change a law or to make a smaller but maybe more realistic and more tangible change in a smaller scale, or like a small community, or it's a big difference, and maybe both of those goals can be part of your plan?
Yes, and exactly like what you were saying earlier about how every documentary seems to want an impact campaign now. I think that people put pressure on their film to do extraordinary things, but which is great, but also an extraordinary thing can also just be something really small, like, for example, helping your main contributor to finance his dream and, you know, send a positive message about his community. But yeah, it doesn't have to involve politics. It can be as simple as trying to fundraise for the people in your film, and that's just as important. And yeah, the goal doesn't have to be huge, essentially.
Yeah, László, how did you define the impact goals when you started the work, and how are you able now to measure what you've achieved?
We had to reset our goal, actually, because the first goal was quite unrealistic. Actually, we wanted to raise money to rebuild Islamic property and create an own place for our main protagonist. And this is a dream we had, and we started working on it, and we actually had to realize that this is something we may not be able to manage and reset, so we had to be honest with ourselves. So we made like steps. So first is try to make a change in Mishi's life and make sure that the community work he does in his own community keeps going. Just to give an example, when for 6 months he didn't have a place to train the kids, and one of the kids he used to train overdosed himself, and died, and we knew that if he doesn't continue to do what he's doing, then there is actually a very serious impact on his local community. So that was like goal number one, to make his work sustainable. And just to go back, we still haven't given up on the goal of him having his own place and be able to work 7 days a week, because that's basically his life mission. But that goal is somewhere out there, but it's still not reached. So we had goal number 2 was we were believing that people in poor communities like Mishi are main protagonists. There are a lot of people like this out there in the world who haven't met their local mayor, whose mission is not sustainable on a small level like his. So we decided to take his message, go to local villages, small Roma and non-Roma communities, progressive prisons, for example, where they have programs to help prisoners, and try to connect local decision makers, take our main protagonists, organize something that sort of shows his work on a local level, and try to matchmake on other places. So this is what we raise money for, and it was also interesting because when you as a producer look at your target audience and where you want to get your money from, we realized that the real target audience of this film is really poor communities without any positive message, and this is not from a money point of view, this is not ticket paying audience. So we had to make sure that we're able to reach this goal and reach those people who need this message and find a way to take cinema to them. So this is what we based step number 2, our campaign. And again, you have to be honest with yourself of how much you reached and sort of redefine your goals. The first and I'm saying this from more like a positive point of view, but the first location we went to was 2 Roma villages, like 100% Roma villages near the Serbian border. And we went out there, prepared the event, spoke to both local mayors. And they were all really happy and helpful, but we picked these villages exactly because our director also made a fiction film on the Roma killings. There was a mass murder case of Roma people a couple years ago, and he made a fiction film about this topic. And we went down to the villages where this film was filmed. So we thought they know the filmmakers, they know the artists, we know the local mayors. And it was a really strong slap on our face. This was our first event that we raised money for. Local mayors and local people thought a big fiction crew is coming down again and it's going to bring a lot of money. That's what was in the mind of the local mayors of these Roma villages. And we go down there with 10 people, we bring a lot of gifts to the kids, we invite people from the big city, from the Roma school, everybody, and the mayors disappeared when they realized we didn't bring money. And we decided, okay, don't worry, we set up our cinema screen outdoors, we did the screenings to the kids we could gather in the village, and then we did a boxing training for them, and it went fantastic. But actually the local decision makers who we knew and who we thought our partners backed out. And so we realized, okay, what we are doing here is much more complicated. We have to be much more careful with how we prepare these events. We have to be more ready. So
you gotta know your audience, right?
Yeah. And it was also funny because this was Roma villages and all these Roma people go there and they said, oh, they don't care about us. So they, even for them, this whole issue, which they thought, okay, we bring the good news to the poor people, like maybe it's not easy as that, as we think.
But I was gonna say also, I was thinking about this in my head, that if you do impact, any marketing, but impact as well for your film, you have to adjust your plan and campaign and goals depending on the very audience you are approaching in a given case. So you can't have a general plan. You have to like specifically cut to the...
Yes, I was saying, I mean, politicians can change things, but sometimes, I mean, I know Dutch filmmakers working a lot in the Congo, and they started with the mobile cinema 10 years ago to bring the films to the local people. So that would start a discussion, and they got money, a lot of money from our Foreign Affairs Ministry to go back there and show the film in all the different villages. And that's, I mean, that's a beautiful thing of impact as well. And I think we're fortunate in the Netherlands that then that's financed to bring the film to the people who maybe need to see it the most. Or that's not maybe true, but it's very important. Otherwise they would not be able to see it because it will not be on television there. The national broadcaster would not broadcast it, so you have to bring it there. And that's another form of impact, of course. but it's very tailor-made. That's the thing.
I think in our country, part of the impact we are aiming for is also about the genre itself, documentaries, because in Hungary, unfortunately, at the moment, not a lot of people watch documentaries, and the genre doesn't have the acknowledgement and appreciation it deserves. We are very much behind in terms of
Is there
this.
a weekly slot? How is it on TV? Is there how many documentaries per week are shown? Just for us to have an idea.
The whole idea of commissioning editors doesn't exist. So that's
so I can't answer your question. It's not
so there is one documentary slot on a news channel which show documentaries, and it's easy to work with this one commissioning editor, but actually just the reality, I was pitching one of my films in CJS. It's at a place called Medibed, and yeah, and I met someone from the Hungarian TV there on the plane, and I'm like, fantastic, we're pitching here, and how come you're interested in Mediterranean films? And she said, no, I'm just coming because it's south of Barcelona, it's in September, and the beach is very nice. So she didn't even turn up at our pitches, and that's why, like, yeah, that's so true. And yeah,
that's very painful.
I was gonna say Sunnyside. We also had a project at Sunnyside,
but
and
it's not really to complain because I believe, like, we do have a funding system for TV length documentaries. Very low budget, to be honest. It's about 40,000 euros you can raise for a TV documentary, and
also on hold this year since January.
They don't
without
finance
us knowing
now.
why
This would be
or
a
how
long topic. So then, local documentary filmmakers. The good thing is that there are fantastic films made here on a shoestring budget, and film creators who truly believe in their work, and they put the extra amount of energy without lack of proper distribution possibilities and broadcasting system, any kind of financing. So we're at the point of successful and really believer documentary filmmakers are now forming a unity, and we have to teach decision makers, broadcasters, audience to make a change. So we started that work, and
so step one, acknowledge the genre itself, and then we can talk about what other goals we want to reach with this kind of films is step two.
One more thing, that we're very lucky to have one broadcasting company called HBO Europe headquartering in Hungary, and my first feature-length documentary was made in co-production with them, and a wonderful person called Hanka Kastelitsova.
We know Hanka.
She is doing that work with us. So she has taught, I think, a dozen filmmakers of raising your dreams high, providing you ways.
Yeah, and Hanka works with West European. I mean, we work together.
Yeah, and she matchmakes for your film, and she really gives you that mindset. So this was sort of my film school, and seeing all these fantastic films from Romania, Serbia, making real change, real impact. And for example, she's able to give me ways to do it and examples of bringing someone from Serbia, someone from Romania, doing this kind of work with us. So we're not completely alone. It's just, as you said, for everything you do, you have to have goals in your mind. At this point, we have very unrealistic goals with the Hungarian Documentary Filmmakers Association to change the whole picture. But yeah, so we're.
And do you work with Ex Oriente then? Do you?
So the thing is that we just started this work, but the good thing there are maybe 10 producers and a dozen directors who have done this kind of film school, going to Venice, Miss West, to others, to Good Pitch, to other forums in Docs in Thessaloniki, and then you meet filmmakers from Europe who partially have similar problems as you. Like if you go to Greece, probably situation is not easier there, or you really see in documentary very, very inspiring success stories of seeing filmmakers that are in the same shoe with you at some point, of having struggles financing your films, and then you all of a sudden realize they went all the way to the Oscars and changed legislation or changed the mindset of lawmakers. So yeah, so we have started defining our goals, and now we're reaching out to organizations all over through the actual connections we made in the past couple of years.
And if you co-produce with a broadcaster like HBO, for example, then it might allow you to have a proper marketing budget to begin with, which allows you to do proper outreach work, like you also did with the film you did with HBO. Maybe you wouldn't want to call it impact campaign, but you did quite serious outreach work to build your audience and do a lot of screenings for that film.
It's always really easy to complain about things, but just the film we did with HBO Europe, this is a film called Ultra. It's about ultra runners. It's actually a 4-language film, so quite complicated. We thought it's going to be a challenge, and then we realized we have to make all these different subtitles, and nobody really understands the whole films. And then when we were pitching it in Thessaloniki, we thought this is an advantage, and then we realized it's in a way a huge disadvantage. But so we financed this film with the Greek source, with NGO money, and with HBO, and then but 70% HBO, and then we are about to come out with the film. We finished it, it's on festivals, and we planned the Hungarian premiere, and then HBO banned cinema distribution. They said this is a VOD company, this is an online platform, and then I have to, instead of complaining, go to a fight with my main partner, Hanka, and she wasn't happy what we thought. Her marketing department decided not to allow this, and then there's always a way to do it, and we were really lucky because running communities is a very dedicated, very interesting community that helps each other, especially extreme long distance runners where there's no money involved. And the financial CEO of HBO is a runner. So
there's always some subjectives going on.
And we learned this from one of the heads of marketing, and we reach out to him, we make him watch the films, and he opened the wallet and allowed the film to come out just after the online premiere. So it had a very interesting span of going first to HBO Go, then HBO broadcast, then 2 weeks later to cinema. But because HBO put so much money into building the brand for this film, and there was money to do it, actually online distribution and broadcast very much helped our cinema premiere, and it was the 10th most successful Hungarian film in cinema that year, so we're really lucky.
I start to feel a little bad about asking and focusing so much about money, but first of all, I'm a producer, so it's sort of my job to worry about that, and I really want to make a change as well, and oftentimes I feel that I need money to do that after a certain point, but But the motivation is the same, I swear. It's just
No, but it's normal. It's that's being professional, right?
You cannot
Money makes the
really
work.
make an impact without money. So actually, my company produces commercial work as well. So quite often, this is how we raise the money for that we can spend on films. But this is something actually Hungarian NGOs, the society has to realize that the Hungarian word for NGO is non-profit, and it sort of suggests that there shouldn't be any money involved. Everyone should work for free, but people have to realize that you have to live and make money to make an impact, to reach an audience, and you have. It's a mindset us producers also have to learn that if. Yeah.
I was just gonna ask that question as next question, that it's such a rapidly changing thing, it's an ever-growing thing, the entire marketing of films and impact especially. So what do you suggest us filmmakers do in order to be able to follow this ever-changing thing? How do I keep myself up to date? What platforms or outlets or what do I follow in order to keep track with these changes?
You mean in terms of the impact?
Yes. So me as a producer, where do I learn more about this?
You know where you learn a lot? There you learn a lot, and you learn a lot from showcases. Like now at Movies That Matter, we do, who are actually supported by Doc Society. They're called Femke Nielsen van Velsen. They're gonna have a big premiere now at ITVA on prisons in South Africa, and they build already a huge network of journalists around it, and they will unroll that, and then they do another big screening at Movies That Matter, and then it will go into the cinemas and so on. So I think to keep on track is see the showcases, maybe, of films, because it's all tailor-made. Your film, Women Captures, is something completely different than taking, and we are doing now a film, and I don't know when it will be ready, because they're in a law case now with Shell, with the women from Nigeria whose husband has been killed by Shell at the time in the 90s. That will have a completely different idea of impact. They're actually supported by Doc Society as well for if we get a big law case. So it's also keep on track, like see how all those different films, how they used the impact and what it really meant. And as you said at the very, very beginning, impact can be, as I say, top down, but it can be completely bottom up as well. I mean,
so I guess it really is a mindset, and you have to be looking at case studies to learn more and more.
That's when you go to goodpitch.org. I mean, all these websites of Doc Society, they're not easy to find. But if you go to goodpitch.org, at the bottom you find the link to the Impact Field Guide, and in there are lots and lots of case studies. And they show exactly what's worked, what has not, and how you measure, and so on. And your film, Virunga, was a great example. It's one of the Good Pitch films as well.
Yeah, and I know this guide. I have known it before, and I just downloaded the updated version, but I know the old version as well. But what I mean, everything is changing so fast, and so much stuff is happening. So I wish I could like follow on a monthly basis what's going on in the documentary impact world, because it really is the reason why we make each of our films.
Yes, absolutely.
I don't know if this makes you feel better. I don't think there's a place that I go to that updates me monthly. It really is a film by film case, something that worked. I mean, I couldn't agree more that the case studies are such incredible ways to figure out what people did. Oh, that's the same as my film, or my film wouldn't suit that approach, or, you know, it's a great way to look at different ways of making impact. But I can't remember what I was saying now.
It's every time different.
Exactly, thank you. Every time is completely different. I know, thanks. And yeah, there is no one size of impact fits all, and that's why also it's so important. My nugget is that you just make sure that your team have the same goals and that you all kind of are willing to go to the same distance with your film, and yeah, that's the most important ingredient, I think.
I feel like we should be doing something more about impact in Hungary. I'm looking at the festival director because this is a very nice start, this talk. But I feel like I would be eager to participate in something that has a bigger space for this topic and to be looking at more case studies. So this is a proposal to you all, if you have an idea how to go more into depth about it.
Yeah.
Yes?
Exactly. Ushi. We are planning that with a good pitch, with a focus on Eastern Europe. Yes.
Yeah, but in Germany, the event itself in Germany.
The event is in Germany just because we can get the money there.
Yeah, okay, let's talk about the details then.
But
let's hear the question.
There will be workshops here too.
Okay.
Okay, so let me introduce myself. My name is Verzió Komlosi, and I consider myself an impact producer, but it's not because I was in the same workshop than Fleur and Vivian. So, from the very beginning. So my name is Verzió Komlosi, and I consider myself an impact producer, and not only because I was in the same workshop that Fleur and Vivian at Doc Society organized in Putten, in Netherlands, but because our activity before was absolutely in this sense of working, because we were working always with the audience. And I think there is as a Hungarian, and understanding that you told before about the films and impact producing, I can see that, yes, each film is different, but it's the very big different on films made by the intention of making an impact, as it's absolutely very important. And I would like to introduce another important thing, that is social value. And the social value, I think it's very important also because it's very hard to measure it, but there are some methods how to measure it, and I think it would be very nice to practice it also. And that Vivian told before that the good pitch has two parts, the lab and also after the event itself. And I think the lab is more important because developing a film and with the is just at the very beginning. It's very important. So that's why, for example, we organized a workshop series for NGOs, because we think that the needs are also very important, and to find out who needs the films and why the filmmakers need the NGOs is also, I think, in Hungary is a very good goal and then a very good aim. So this was our pilot program, but as we will participate on the German edition of the Doc Good Pitch, I think the lab will be also very important. So if you need some point of view to how to measure impact and how to make social value, I think it's not enough to see the guide, but it's true to see also case studies that, for example, the field guides has.
So what we're doing now is that we are, when we say that the Good Pitch is coming 21 in Berlin, next year will all be about workshops, and we're talking already how we can get also one in Hungary, so in all the countries, because we want to do the groundwork.
I would love
you know.
to be involved, but I'm sure that a lot of other people in the audience are super happy to hear this, so that's great news.
Közelebb kell tartani, az biztos segít.
Okay, I appreciate all of this small time that I can speak. So the bigger thing is that this workshop is not only for Hungary, but it was the pilot was in Hungary, but for the V4 regions. So I think it's very important to have also colleagues from Poland and from Slovakia to compare the problems, because the main problems we have the same. So we made some research about how they have problems with the media, with the migrant people and minority people. So we made a very big study before.
Sure, and we are culturally also close, not just geographically, yes. So can I ask again more specifics about the good pitch? Because okay, there is the two parts, Impact Lab and the pitch, the event. And do I apply for this Impact Lab as a filmmaker also in a more advanced stage in the production, or
Yeah.
when can people apply?
That really depends. I mean, if you, let's say, if I say for a German filmmaker who has a broadcaster on board, of course I can apply already when I know that the film will be ready at some point. You don't want to be at good pitch too early when you don't know, because this film can catalyze, this event can catalyze so much. So if you're not ready yet with your film in time, then, you know, people are not willing to maybe wait another 6 months or a year before the film is ready and they can actually do something with it. So be sure that when you apply, you have a clear deadline for your film, that you can communicate as well, that you can already show a lot, that there are no more questions what the film is about. Because that's not what this whole program is about. It's really about the impact campaigns later on.
Yeah.
Also, I went to the Impact Lab as an impact producer, not part of a project. And there were a couple of people there, and I think every year, that are new to impact. So actually, that might be a great place if you're looking to learn more about impact producing. Go to the Doc Society website or keep up with their comms, and then when they're looking for applications to actually attend the Impact Lab, just to be an observer and to take part and to learn, that's a great way to learn about impact as well.
Yeah.
Are there any more questions from the audience? Yeah? I'll just give you...
Yes, thank you very much for this panel. It's very interesting for me. My name's Johnny. We made this film Sabadekatem that's premiering here, and it's a film that is basically designed to impact. That was our idea. And we had a big disagreement internally among the group that made it about like what position that film festivals could have in impact, and I was wondering what you thought about that. Like, what place does film festivals as a way of distributing a film have, like, in trying to create impact?
Yeah, well, so festivals like Movies That Matter is an incredible, like, I guess the research you do into the festivals will answer those questions, because there are a lot that offer opportunities beyond screening to an audience. But then festivals are also where, you know, if you get into a festival where there are buyers or sales agents, that's also where you might find a distribution deal, and that's the beginning of how you end up distributing the film if you don't end up doing it yourself, which I've done with a film of my own that wasn't picked up. But that might be where it's picked up and where you negotiate how your film is seen by the communities that you want to see it. So I think festivals are pretty I think they can just be, yeah, the more festivals there are at, surely the better, or that might be a simple response.
Yes, but quite often a festival is just a possibility for a producer to reach out to people at local places. So it's not always the festival offers you a lot, not even at, for example, ITFA. If you go there, you realize there are maybe 200 other filmmakers here that want to make an impact on their film. So it's really your job to find the right people to sit down in the first couple of rows, invite them, explain them why it's important. If you have the energy, then reach out to local media with your film. So it's really a possibility, and it gives you credibility to reach out to anyone, basically, with your film, and say, my film is screened here. And my advice is to be as pushy as possible, because yeah, people have, just to give you one example, my producer partner is he's coming from like a street kid life. Basically, he brought the idea to our film because he saw this former mafia guys change his life, and he started writing letters to everybody, to like long letters. And I'm saying, Attila, nobody's gonna read this. This is, I mean, the way you write, it's too much information. And but he was so pushy. He was writing to Orbán Viktor every week. And after, just before our national premiere, the office of the Prime Minister answered in a long letter. Because Attila, and it was completely, I told him not to do it, not to do it. And then we receive a letter from Orbán's office. And then with this letter, we send this letter, we ask them to send the original copy, not just the scanned version. And then we go with this letter to local mayor's office, who also was from the Fidesz party. And that's also partially because he couldn't say much anymore. So it's really a possibility that you are at a festival to reach out to people, and you know very well who you want to communicate to. So
I think that while your question is a very valid question, but in my experience, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not, maybe might not be possible to answer it in generic, generally, because I think that what you have to do is to be looking at the very festival where you're going. You have to figure out who's going to be there, which journalists, which sales agents, or which organizations. And it also depends on the nature and topic of your film and the slot it was programmed into. So it's so many factors that can change the answer to the question. I think is a wide. Again, it always depends on the very case, I think.
Congratulations on your premiere.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah, hi, I'm Tatiana here. I'm a filmmaker and focusing on political documentaries, and we made two films which are quite critical of India. But now what we found is that the broadcasters, they would not touch it because they basically have a quite lucrative business in India. I think it's the same in China, what we've seen now recently with Hong Kong protests. Second, with the NGOs and foundation, it's the same story because they need political patronage in India to operate in India and Nepal, so they would not help us either. With the embassies, it's very, very interesting because they are all, you know, especially like the West, like Germany and UK, they are also quite afraid to actually even attend or like speak about that because they have very clear guidelines of what they can or cannot say, which events they can attend or not. So what would you recommend in terms of, you know, getting the film out there? Like, you know, creating an impact, because we are cut off of a large part of the audience, and also we are very limited in terms of partners. Now, can we cut the film to basically, you know, to make it perhaps okay for Al Jazeera? But this would, you know, that was the message would be quite lost in this process.
Did you bring it to festivals already? Or?
No, we haven't.
But
so
that's the way in, because I mean I'm quite familiar with this what you're just describing, and we had it with films in South Africa. That I was the commissioning editor from the Netherlands, and we showed it. TV would not absolutely not touch it, but we showed it around in local things and in festivals. Then it gets a buzz. And because of that, it gets a political pressure, and then it might work. But that's very harsh. That's what I meant very at the beginning, when you get NGOs or other partners in with budget, that they can have a sort of editorial say, and that might weaken your story, and you have to. How you say in English? You have less independence in making the story. I understand. I work with people from India, and I know, because I don't mind. Well, in my former job to broadcast this, and that helps in other countries. But get it to festivals. I think that's a gateway, maybe. I don't know if you have other ideas.
Do you have something to add?
Thank you.
No, but it's hard.
Tough situation, yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's
to make very critical films is always, obviously. I mean, for us, in my work as commissioning editor, I had to fight with the channel managers also sometimes, that they said this is too political, and I always say, yeah, that's just life itself, and then hopefully he will or she will find a place for broadcasting, and otherwise go through festivals.
Yeah, thank you.
I guess one other option, but this is sort of jumping to the impact before you've figured out the other parts of the film's distribution. But I guess if you find it hard to get into festivals or find festivals in the location that you're wanting to show the film, I guess the next step would be to start thinking of it with an impact hat, which would be reaching out to organizations already in India that are either charities or NGOs or non-profits or whatever, that are managing the issue that your film's about, and seeing if they want to host a screening, invite people, try and partner with them.
I think in India it's a
it's
a no-go. It's really bad. Like the media freedom.
I see. So it's not just the decision makers; it's also the communities.
Yeah. Right, that was right. That's what you were just saying. That even the NGOs don't dare to show, because then they have to commit themselves to a political statement, basically.
And what about other people beneath not beneath, but in the ladder of organizations? What about just local communities? I don't know, just ideas, but.
Thank you very much.
I think we are out of time. I don't know if someone has maybe a last question. No? Okay. Then.
In that case, thank you for coming, and thank you for being here, trying to answer all of our questions.
Thank you very much.